Welcome back to the Broad Street Sports Podcast featuring Zachary Chabian. Today, for week one, we'll be doing our power rankings moving into week two, where I have every team after their week one performances and what they could do to maybe get higher up in the list. Starting with the 32nd team, it's without a doubt the Carolina Panthers. The way they played week one against the Saints was absolutely terrible. Like, coming off the season they had last year with only having 2 wins and having to give their first round pick to the Saints is actually terrible. Like, the performance they put up in New Orleans was disgusting. Like, they let them score 47 points on them, and they were only able to manage 10 points. And it just seems like Bryce Young is still lost. And they added a little bit in the offseason, but they seem like they could easily be the worst team again this year without a doubt. Moving on to 31, it's the New York Giants, in my opinion. The Giants, they could barely get anything going on offense. Daniel Jones has looked even worse coming off injury, and he wasn't able to get anything going with his offense. And they let Sam Darnold cook on offense for the Vikings. That not much has to be said about that. But for both the Giants and the Panthers, I don't see much improvements for them this year, and I could easily see both of them fighting for the last pick in the draft without a doubt. Moving on to the next one, I have the Las Vegas Raiders. They look like they could not get anything together against the Chargers, and letting J.K. Dobbins, a guy who's known for being injury prone, run for over 100 yards on them is actually very bad. Like, I don't know what else to explain it for them. They just seem like they have no directions whatsoever. Gardner Minshew is not that good. The running backs are really concerning, and especially after losing Josh Jacobs, and Minshew was really not able to get the offense going, and that's the reason they lost the game. So moving on to number 29 here in the rankings, I have the New England Patriots. Even though they did win, I still don't expect much out of them after that, because I think for the Patriots, they're going to be contending for the number one pick all year. And without a doubt, like, this week was just like an upset in my opinion. I was very surprised in them winning. But that's why I would have them over these other teams like the Panthers, Giants, and Raiders. But a good win for the Patriots, but I don't expect them to make this a habit for a while. Moving on to the next team, I have the Washington Commanders. I just think, without a doubt, like, Jaden Daniels played well, but at the end of the day, there's not much you can really say about that. Like, he played well on offense, but was not even able to get a passing game going. And I think, in my opinion, like, he's going to be running for his life all throughout his rookie year, and just hopefully he doesn't get injured, because if he does, the Commanders might be screwed, because he's the only potential they have right now. And without a doubt, like, they're not going to be able to do anything if that's all they're able to do with Jaden Daniels running. He's a good passing QB, but until he gets the protection, he won't be able to show it. That's why I have the Commanders at 28. Moving on to number 27, I have the Cleveland Browns. They played a terrible game against the Dallas Cowboys. Deshaun Watson continues to show that he was not worth the contract, not worth giving up all those assets, and he just seems like he's lost. It seems like that the Houston version of him will never come back. Like, he was so bad. Like, his longest pass was until the third quarter, where was a 15-yard pass to Jerry Jeudy. He needs to show them that he's worth the contract, because what it seems like, whenever he's gone out, the quarterbacks that have gone in there have played better for them. Example, Joe Flacco last year. He made David Njoku look good. Amari Cooper. That's why they brought in Jerry Jeudy this offseason and had Elijah Moore last year. Deshaun Watson just doesn't seem like he's a good scheme fit for Kevin Stefanski. And honestly, after week one, I know they probably aren't going to, but they should really consider benching him for Jameis Winston to at least see what he can put up for them in the time being. Moving on to the next team, I have at number 26, the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, I know T. Higgins was out, but at the same time, you still had Joe Burrow out there. You still had Jamar Chase. You signed Zach Moss in the offseason, and this defense still has a lot of young pieces and guys who are still veterans. So at the end of the day, I feel like They still should have won this game against the Patriots. Only scoring 10 points is really, really bad for them. But it did, at the end of the day, they weren't ready to play, and the Patriots went in there and beat them, and Gerard Mayo got his first career win as a coach. But other than that, the Bengals have some real questions to answer because now they're going to Kansas City to play the Chiefs, possibly without T. Higgins again. So it will be interesting to see what they do with that. Moving on to the next team at number 25, I have the Tennessee Titans. They were up 17-3 against the Bears. They made Caleb Williams look terrible. Like, I don't know what else they needed to do, but then they ended up choking the game and losing to them. And at the end of the day, that's just terrible because Will Levis, all he needed to do was keep the ball conservative and play a good fourth quarter, and he really didn't. Tony Pollard had a good game for them in his first game as a Titan, but other than that, you didn't see much out of the Titans in the second half, and that's the reason they lost the game. And to hold Caleb Williams to 92 passing yards on defense and your offense not back you up and help you win the game is concerning, but hopefully the Titans can get a bounce-back win after a hard-fought collapse in the second half of that game. Moving on to the next team, I have the Denver Broncos. I think they played a good game against the Seattle Seahawks. They didn't win, obviously, but there was some potential shown there. Bo Nix had a couple bad passes, but at the same time, he's still growing as a quarterback, and I think if he's able to progress throughout the season, that's all the Broncos are looking for out of him. And really, other than that, just keep trying to grow this team throughout the year and just find some guys who can be future guys for you. Moving on to the next team, I have the Chargers. I think the Chargers, even though they did win, they're not going to be like the best team in my opinion this year, so that's why I have them where I have them. But other really than that, like they played they played good football, and that's the reason they beat the Raiders. So, but we'll have to see where they can build it off from that. But overall, a good win for them, and John Harbaugh, again, his first career game coaching, played a pretty well game. Moving on to the 23rd team, I have the Atlanta Falcons. They, for the offseason moves they made, the defense showed up. They didn't allow a single touchdown. It was the offense that caused many, many concerns because they weren't able to get anything going. Kirk Cousins had a couple picks. His only touchdown was to Kyle Pitts, which is very, very concerning. I mean, and especially coming into Philadelphia this week, they're going to need to step up their game a lot. So we'll have to see what they do from there. But, I mean, they didn't play the best game, but they got the win. They lost, and that's the reason they're 0-1. Kirk Cousins did not play a good game, and the Steelers barely played any offense. Justin Fields is okay, but, I mean, they did what they needed to do to win. Moving on to 21st team, the aforementioned Steelers. They didn't play a good game on offense, but they still got the win. Justin Fields did what he needed to do. George Pickens had a good game. Najee Harris was good on the ground. And they did what they needed to do on defense. TJ Watt had a massive, massive game. Dante Jackson, his first game in a Steelers uniform after the trade for Deontay Johnson, had a huge interception late on Kirk Cousins. And the defense showed why it's one of the top 5 units every year, every single year. And that's why they got the dub. Moving on to top 20. At number 20, I have the Seattle Seahawks. They got the win against the Broncos. It wasn't the best performance, but they did what they needed to do. Kenneth Walker rushed well. Geno Smith played an okay game. Had that big 30-yard rush for a touchdown towards the end of the half. Just like a weird game between the Seahawks and Broncos, but the Seahawks did what they needed to do to get the win. And, yeah. Moving on to the next team, I have the Arizona Cardinals. They were another team. They were another team like the Titans. They were up against the team they should have lost against, and they choked it. Cardinals were playing a good game. Kyler Murray played an amazing first half. They were holding Josh Allen down, but then he just became Superman in the second half and led the Bills to a thrilling victory, 34-28. And at the end of the day, the Cardinals, they're just hanging their heads. Marvin Harrison not getting involved is inexcusable. 1 catch for 4 yards in his first game in his career. You drafted him 4th overall. You need to get him the ball more, because if you don't get him the ball more, this offense is not going to succeed at all. Trey McBride was all right, But like your leading receiver was Michael Wilson. He had a touchdown, but I mean Kyler's got to get it to his receivers more. That's why they drafted Harrison. That's why they still have McBride. Kyler needs to make sure he gets it to these guys, or they're not going to win any games. And there'll be real questions if Kyler's still the guy in Arizona. Moving on to the next team, I have the New York Jets. They got destroyed against the Niners on Monday Night Football. I know Rodgers is coming off an Achilles injury, but seriously, he did not play a good game. He had that one good touchdown pass to Allen Lazard, and they had that one drive where they drove down the field and Breece Hall scored a touchdown. But really, other than that, they didn't play a good game whatsoever, so that's why I have them where they are. I still think they can build off it, but not as of right now. I really don't think they played a good style of football. Moving on to the next team, I have the Indianapolis Colts. They had a thriller game against the Houston Texans where they ended up losing. But Anthony Richardson looked great, had that big touchdown to Alec Pierce, had a couple other big passes. But the main concern for him is just like Jaden Daniel. He feels like he can get hit anywhere and stay healthy. That's not going to be a good strategy for him. He's like the type of person, if you draft him in fantasy, he'll get maybe 3-4 weeks out. You'll get 3-4 weeks out of him, and then you have to put him on the IR for the rest of the season. He seems like he has no care whatsoever about his body, and that can knock him out the league very quickly. Moving on to the last team, I have in the top 20, I have the Chicago Bears. Even though they didn't have a good offensive game from Caleb Williams, it was very weird. Their defense stepped up huge, and that's a great sign for them. If their defense can make plays and help them win games, as soon as the offense starts evolving, they could be a dangerous team in the NFC, a playoff team. But we still haven't seen much from Caleb Williams. I know it's his first game, but they need to see a little bit more strides for him in week 2 against a big game on Sunday Night Football against the Texans. And if he can give them that, then sky's the limit for them. Moving into the top 15, the first team I have is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Even though they lost to the Miami Dolphins, I still think they played a good game. ETN fumbling late was the deciding factor ultimately because the Dolphins came to life after that. Tyreek Hill with an 80-yard touchdown, and then Jason Sanders ended it with a game-winning field goal. But as long as the Jags can adjust, I think they should be fine. Brian Thomas already seems like he's forming a good connection with Trevor Lawrence, and that could be a great sign. And as soon as they get Christian Kirk involved in this offense, they could play very well. And Evan Ingram needs to be involved way more. The way he played week 1 is unacceptable. And as long as they can get him involved, they should be fine. Moving on to the next team, I have the New Orleans Saints. Even though they played the Carolina Panthers, they still played a great game of football. Their defense looked very good. The offense was, and it can't be surprised with Derek Carr QB. But other than that, they played a good game. They did what they needed to do, and they got the win. Moving on to the next team, I have the Green Bay Packers. They lost the game, but that's not their main concern right now. Their main concern is Jordan Love. Jordan Love going down is very huge for them. They said it could be a 3 to 6 week injury, and putting Malik Willis in there for at least 3 weeks at least could be, I don't know how that's going to work out for them. Maybe it can win a game or two for them. They're still very much in the playoff hunt because they still have a good team around Jordan Love, even though he's not there. But as long as they can keep playing their style of football, they should be fine. Moving on to the next team, I have the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings, they did what they need. They're another team that did what they needed to do. They played the Giants, and they destroyed them. Sam Darnold played a good game, which I was very surprised about. Aaron Jones in his Vikings debut had a very good game. And then Jefferson, if he can form another connection with an okay quarterback, he should have prime for a good season. It's just getting Jordan Addison involved and trying to get the tight end position a little bit involved with the loss of TJ Hawkinson for at least the first 4 weeks of the season. Moving on to the final team in the top 15, I have the LA Rams. Even though they put up a great fight against the Lions, losing Puka Nacua for at least 4 weeks is going to be huge for them. Cooper Kupp, got people who have Cooper Kupp in fantasy, his stock just went up crazy, so good for people who have him. But for them as a whole, losing Puka will be huge because he was involved in that offense. Cooper Kupp was finally healthy. Stafford finally had 2 elite receivers in the offense. But losing him and now already not having Higbee since he got injured in the playoff game last year, it's going to be tough for the Rams to sustain offense. But even though they still played a good game and almost beat the Lions, if it wasn't for the David Montgomery drive in overtime, this team is still very good and very much a playoff threat in the NFC this year. Moving into the top 10, the first team I have is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay had a good game against Washington. They played their style of football, and Baker Mayfield that's all he needed to do. He played well, and they got the win. And Baker Mayfield seems like he's got a great connection with Mike Evans, and if they can keep it up, they could easily win the NFC South again this year. I think it's between them, the Saints, and the Falcons. All three of them could easily win it if they are playing their style of football the way they like it. But really, other than that, they did what they needed to do. Moving on to the number 9 team, I have the Houston Texans. They barely got a win against the Colts, but they still got the win. Stephon Diggs got the ball a good amount of times, had 2 touchdowns, and Joe Mixon had a huge game for him and his Texans debut. It was mostly about these running backs playing well in their first game. But other than that, they got the win. They did what they needed to do, and the Texans look like an easy threat again in the AFC as long as everything's working on full cylinders. Moving on to the number 8 team, I have the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys, they did what they needed to do. Their defense played extraordinary against the Browns. Michael Parsons had a big game. Eric Hendricks a pick in his first game as a Cowboy. And Trayvon Diggs is back off his injury and looks like he's primed for another good season. But the offense concerned me a little bit. Dak Prescott didn't play the best game, but he's got New Orleans coming up this week, so we'll see if he'll be able to play a good style of football and get back to the form he usually is in the regular season. And CeeDee Lamb, he's back, so he's playing and stuff like that. And pretty much if Dak and CeeDee can get their connection going like they did last year, the Cowboys are going to be the Cowboys. They'll contend in the regular season, maybe get a wild card first round bye and find a way to choke. But I mean, for week 1, their defense played really good, and their offense still needs to make some adjustments moving on into the season. Moving on to the next team, I have the Buffalo Bills. The Bills, they came back against the Cardinals and ended up getting a good win. They did what they needed to do, and Josh Allen looks like he's going to be carrying that team a whole lot, and we'll see what he can do from there. But the Bills getting a good win against the Cardinals. Now they have a great matchup against the Dolphins on Thursday night. Speaking of the Dolphins, I have them as the final team in here. So, the Dolphins, they came back. Jason Sanders kicked a field goal. Tyreek Hill looks like he's just going to be Tua's guy once again. Jalen Waddle had a good game. Tua played all right. And their defense looked good in the second half. And the Dolphins and Bills, in my opinion, those are the 2 teams fighting it out for the AFC East. And easily, both of them could easily win it. And we could see that this Thursday night with guys like A-Chain, if he's healthy, Tyreek, Tua, Josh Allen, James Cook, if they can get Kincaid back in the offense. All three of those guys from both teams could both make impacts for them in this game and throughout the season. Now, moving into the top 5, number 5, I have the Philadelphia Eagles. I think the Eagles, they didn't play their best style of football, especially on the offensive side. Jalen Hurts didn't have the greatest game, which doesn't concern me whatsoever. It's not playing in the preseason. Field was terrible, and his decision-making wasn't the best. But all good players adjust from that, and I believe he can adjust from it. So we'll have to see what from there. And the defense, they didn't play the greatest. Love how Quinyon Mitchell played in his first game, and Zach Bond with the game of his life in Brazil. And they got the job done, and they got the win. Like they say, it's not how you won. If you won, you won, pretty much. Moving on to number 4, I have the Detroit Lions. They won at the end of the day. Jared Goff did what he needed to do. Amon-Ra not being involved in the offense surprised me, but wow. Jameson Williams, he could be a breakout star this year. I know it's only week 1, but he already seems like he's healthy and he's ready to go. And that could be a very concerning sign for other teams, especially after the way he played was great. And if they can get Amon-Ra involved in this offense, they got Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, Montgomery, how he played in overtime. And their defense looked a little bit better than last year. Ultimately, the Lions are still they're a very good threat in the NFC without a doubt, and not a team to look past. Moving on to number 3, I have the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens, even though they lost, they were this close to taking it to overtime or even going for 2 and winning the game. I still think the Ravens are maybe second or third best team in the AFC behind the Chiefs, but they're still going to be a team to be reckoned with. Lamar, if he can play well and they can get Derrick Henry involved in this offense, likely seems like he's the tight end 1 as right now, because Andrews I know he's coming back from injury, but he just looked like he was still working back and doesn't seem like he's still in the greatest of conditioning. And Zay Flowers, if they can get connected and stuff like that, and you know what you're going to get out of their defense every year. So it should be interesting to see how they maybe have a bounce back win here in week 2. Moving on to the second team, I have the San Francisco 49ers. The Niners, they did what they needed to do. They destroyed the heck out of the Jets. They were pounding the ball on offense with Jordan Mason out of all people. Christian McCaffrey was out. Jordan Mason had 26 attempts for 147 yards and a touchdown. He had about 4 or 5 yards a carry. He was just doing everything for them. Brock Purdy concerned me a little bit. He didn't have the best game, wasn't able to get to his guys like he liked. And Brandon Ayuk, I don't know where the heck he was, but ever since he got the contract in the first game, he was a no-show. So we'll have to see how they get the offense involved. Have the game against the Vikings this week. We'll see how that goes. But, I mean, good win for the Niners. And then, obviously, the number 1 team. No surprises here. The Chiefs. They didn't play their best style of football, but it doesn't matter. They're still the best team in football, without a doubt. And they pretty much proved that in week 1, and I think they're going to continue to prove that throughout the regular season. I'm pretty much guaranteed that they're going to make it at least to the AFC Championship. I don't see it anything worse than that, only if like an injury happens. But not much to explain about the Chiefs. They're still the best team in the NFL, and until someone changes that, they will be the best team in the NFL. So that's my power rankings for week 1. If you have any disagreements, if you agree with me on anything, let me know down in the comments below. But other than that, that's today's episode. Look for a picks for tomorrow. Other than that, you guys have a good rest of your day. See you.